The environment provides people with essential resources, cultural foundations, and a home for both them and the surrounding wildlife. It is this interdependence, though, that can lead to conflict, through competition over scarce resources or human impact on environmental degradation. Former Ecuadorian Minister of Environment Yolanda Cacabatzi shares how this violence can occur.
One of them is, of course, natural resources. When we talk about the environment, we are talking about resources that can be abundant or scarce, and both can be an issue. Why are you taking mine? That belongs to me, or there is inequity in the distribution of a resource.
In our globalizing world today, multinational corporations are on the rise, and so too are the tensions among them and the local communities where they operate. When environmental damages occur as a result of the corporation's actions, the terms of reparation and compensation are usually a large source of controversy. In many situations, it takes years to come to an agreement, and even then, a comprehensive and just solution is difficult to achieve. In recent years, Ecuador has encountered several cases like this. In particular, one of the main issues that this film will focus on is the environmental conflict between the Ecuadorian people and multinational petroleum corporations. A recent example is that of the Trans-Ecuadorian pipeline oil system. Petroecuador had been extracting crude oil from the Amazon jungle to pass through the town of Papayacta, when in 2003, heavy machinery traveled over the underground pipeline, rupturing it and thus resulting in a massive oil spill, the worst spill in 31 years. Jeff Pugh, Executive Director of the Center for Mediation, Peace, and Resolution of Conflict, explains the situation and the effect it had on the surrounding community.
This is a little micro-enterprise project. They have the thermal springs over here. They also have tourism where people will come and fish, and they've got cattle and all this. So obviously they were significantly damaged by the contamination. Their cattle died, people stopped coming for tourism. So there was some sort of reparation process, but it wasn't really a negotiation. The power imbalance was so great that the municipal government of the region said, okay, we'll give you, I don't know, say $100,000. But of that, you can actually have $20,000, and the rest is for our costs of cleaning up or whatever we're doing. So it wasn't really a negotiation, it was more of a mandated solution. Petroecuador said, well, you have a couple of choices. You can either take the conditions we're offering you and take this little bit of money that you can have right now, or you can take us to court, which of course will, we have our hordes of lawyers and it'll take years and thousands of dollars, and yeah, you're starving and don't have enough to eat, but those are your choices.
Pipelines that run through ecologically sensitive areas such as this one pose a great threat to the environment and the local watershed. Jeff Pugh explains how the damage in Papayacta affected Quito's water supply.
From this entire watershed area, it drew about 60% of its drinking water. Now, after the contamination, they shut off the part of the water that drew from here, or they say they did, and so they're drawing water from lakes further up.
More than 60 major ruptures of this pipeline have occurred since 1972, resulting in the release of more than 614,000 barrels of oil into the environment.
A similar situation occurred with Chevron Texaco in Ecuador. A lawyer in the Texaco case, Luis Yanza, explains the situation.
Pero quienes construyeron la tecnología y las instalaciones petroleras en el oriente fue Texaco. Ellos tomaron la decisión de construir piscinas con desechos tóxicos. Ellos tomaron la decisión de arrojar 18.000 millones de desechos tóxicos al agua. Ellos decidieron utilizar esa tecnología obsoleta. Entonces, y también ellos fueron los operadores de todas esas instalaciones. Por lo tanto, ellos son responsables de todos esos daños.
The irresponsibility of the company's actions has led to many problems for the local population. Now, Luis Yanza explains some of these problems.
Por eso hoy tenemos niños que sufren de leucemia, varios tipos de cáncer, gente que tiene problemas en la piel porque está en contacto con el agua contaminada. Hay altas tasas de cáncer y abortos espontáneos en todas las zonas donde operó Texaco, de tal manera que no solamente es un daño ambiental, sino también un impacto social muy grave que ha provocado Texaco en el Ecuador. Han perdido sus recursos naturales, han perdido su cultura por la intromisión de colonización y también de trabajadores de las compañías petroleras, de los trabajadores de Texaco, que entraron a sus comunidades con costumbres ajenas a sus tradiciones, a su forma de vida. Y esto ha provocado que ahora estos 5 grupos indígenas, estas 5 nacionalidades, estén al borde de la extinción cultural, porque todos sus hábitos alimenticios, su forma de vivir en comunidad, su forma de curarse las enfermedades con recursos de la selva, todo eso ha cambiado, porque su territorio ahora está reducido, tienen menos selva, menos espacio para que ellos puedan depender de la selva.
One group affected by environmental struggles like this is the Kofan indigenous people who live in the headwaters of the rivers along the border between Colombia and Ecuador. Throughout their history, the Kofan have been forced to deal with the encroaching outside world. The majority of their recent struggles have involved large oil companies. One of the Kofan leaders, Randy Borman, shares some of their specific encounters.
It was in '66 they began to actually drill wells. The first batch was seismic trails, these straight trails that we love for hunting, because they got it, into areas that we never gotten before. But then the next thing was to actually go in and start drilling wells, and that's when we first began to experience pollution. It became like, in 1972, the road arrived and the pipeline, and commercial production of the oil began. The same year, well, no, the next year, 1973, the river came up and knocked out the bridge and the oil pipeline, broke the oil pipeline. And we had a 26-inch oil pipeline draining directly into the Aguarico for several hours before it was no shutoff valves, no nothing anywhere. The sludge reached down into the Brazilian Amazon. And in our area, it was, at Dureno, it was this thick. By the time it got to the mouth of the Aguarico, it was still this thick. It effectively killed most of our marine, most of our river wildlife. The caimans, the anacondas, the turtles, the dolphins, everything that just hits the surface to breathe got killed. Stuff that got off on the side streams was able to survive, but it was a major, major ecological disaster. And there's never really been, I mean, there's the records that Texaco kept of how much they claimed that they lost, but nobody really knows how much oil actually went into the system at that point. Absolutely, you can pick any date out of anything out of your head for the last, ever since 1972, and the oil company will have to do some searching, and they'll probably find within a week that there was an oil spill. That's how bad it is. So it's not a question of we can say, okay, this spill and this spill and this spill. It's just a constant thing that's happening.